This is Mac OS Ken.
A trim target for Apple shares, two tales of Apple and China, and my grocery store is finally getting Apple Pay. I know you are concerned. It is Wednesday, the 9th of November, 2022. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Ladder. Smart, dynamic term life insurance. Learn more at ladderlife.com/MacOSCan. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Another financial firm has weighed in on Apple's iPhone 14 Pro warning. You likely remember, but I'll remind you anyway. The Cupertino company issued a press release Sunday evening saying that waits for iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max will be extended. It also stressed that demand remains strong for the two Pro phones. That led to a number of analysts analyzing, with one running behind. I'm looking at you, Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring. Apple 3.0 has added his missing missive to its mix. Like most Apple analysts, Woodring stresses what Apple stressed, that it's a supply problem, not a demand issue. Said differently, says the note, we believe this situation equates to more of a deferral of iPhone demand than a destruction of demand, which does not change our overweight thesis. The title of his note has Woodring arguing that Apple's press release presents an opportunity to buy the dip. There's just one problem there. There hasn't really been a dip. Apple shares have picked up about a half a percentage point each day for the past 2 days. As indicated in his note, Woodring maintains an overweight rating on Apple shares. He trimmed a bit off his price target, though, dropping that from $177 to $175. Two looks at Apple and China from two big publications Tuesday. First, the Financial Times reiterates what a lot of people have already decided, that Apple's manufacturing is too tied up in the Middle Kingdom. When it works well, giving Apple access to a workforce able to make its products and a buying class more than willing to buy those products. If there was new news in the piece, it was this. Apple is said by the Financial Times to be the most profitable tech company in China. Like, just the China part of Apple. According to the report, operating profits in Greater China, which includes Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and mainland China, have shot up 104% over 24 months to $31.2 billion in the financial year to September, eclipsing the $15.2 billion earned by Tencent and the $13.5 billion from Alibaba in their most recent 12-month period, according to S&P Global Market Intelligence. That is Apple generating profits that beat China's two biggest tech companies combined, according to the report. And of course, the problem with having all your eggs in one basket, what happens when something happens to that basket? Additionally, the report says critics argue that Apple's reliance on Chinese manufacturing has made it acquiesce too readily to authoritarian demands. Apple declined to comment for the Financial Times piece, though the paper pointed to the company's usual argument: it follows the law of the land in the lands where it does business. Going a bit darker is a piece from the New York Times. It's an article worth knowing about, though I'm not sure it's worth reading. I mean, unless you want to. Like the Financial Times, the Gray Lady focuses on Apple manufacturing being too tied up in China. The piece uses Sunday's warning about iPhone 14 Pro Max weights to illustrate that point. It also talks a lot about Apple's now dead plan to use storage from China's Yangtze Memory Technologies company in iPhones made in China for China. If you're a regular Mac OS Ken listener, you know that story. I covered it on the 18th of October edition, thanks to a Nikkei Asia piece. We also talked about it on the 18th of October edition of the Daily Observations podcast from the Mac Observer. But, more people read the New York Times than listen to macOS Ken. So if you suddenly hear talk about something you heard here a little over 3 weeks ago, blame the paper of record. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Ladder. Smart, dynamic term life insurance. It is not fun to think about not being there for your loved ones. I mean, outside of the tragedy, there's also all the stuff for which they rely on you. Paying the mortgage, covering college costs, maybe a wedding. No, you probably don't do all of that by yourself, but do you want to leave your family with no help? It may not be fun, but if you need it, you really don't want to put off setting up term coverage life insurance. That's why today is the day to choose life insurance through Ladder. Ladder is 100% digital. No doctors, no needles, no paperwork when you apply for $3 million in coverage or less. You just need a few minutes and a phone or a laptop to apply. Ladder's smart algorithms work in real time, so you will find out if you are instantly approved. There will always be reasons to put this off. The reasons to not put it off are more important. So go to ladderlife.com/macOSKen today to see if you are instantly approved. That's LADDER life.com/macOSKen. ladderlife.com/macOSKen. News that I have been waiting for since the start of the pandemic and never thought I was going to hear. The grocery giant Kroger has started accepting Apple Pay at its nearly 200 Ralph stores in Southern California. I have seriously been DMing Ralph's on Twitter off and on for months, asking why this hadn't happened yet and when it was likely to. Now a piece from Mac Rumors says all 184 SoCal locations are accepting Apple's contactless payment solution. The piece says the news is particularly notable because Kroger had been working its own payment angle. Instead of Apple Pay, the report says Kroger offers its own service called Kroger Pay, which allows customers to scan the QR code at checkout to pay with a card stored in the Kroger app. The only other Kroger subsidiary to accept Apple Pay is QFC in the Northwest. Squeaky wheels on the left coast, it seems. No word on whether Kroger and its other subsidiaries will follow Ralph's on the Apple Pay route. Tuesday was a day of sort of vague software updates from Apple. Mac Rumors ran a series of posts yesterday saying that Apple has seeded the second betas of macOS Ventura 13.1, iOS and iPadOS 16.2, watchOS 9.2, and tvOS 16.2 to developers. Not super vague, though if you're not in the developer program, they're shrouded in mystery. Greater mysteries lay in the things you stick in your ears. 9to5Mac says Apple has started dropping a new build of AirPods Pro 2 firmware into the stoppers. It's still version 5.1.58, though the build number has changed from 5A377 to 5B58, and I'm pretty sure I just sank your battleship. What does the update do? As usual, you are not cleared for that information. All Apple says is that the build includes bug fixes and other improvements. That said, 9to5Mac thinks/hopes the update addresses issues around audio drifting and audio syncing. According to the report, audio drifting is an issue with the headphones where the sound shifts between each side of the two earbuds. The audio will move back and forth between earbuds and can also get out of sync with videos. For AirPods Pro 2 specifically, affected users say they are experiencing a combination of audio drifting and shifting, as well as volume levels randomly increasing or decreasing. Maybe this fixes that, maybe it doesn't. You'll have to wait to find out since there's also no way to prompt the update. Apple's standard line is that new firmware versions will install when the AirPods are connected via Bluetooth to your iPhone, according to the report. AirPods aren't Apple's only in-ear noise machines. A piece from Mac Rumors says the Cupertino company also released new firmware for Beats Studio Buds, Beats Fit Pro, and Powerbeats Pro. If you're wondering what the updates do, you should meet the people packing AirPods Pro too. You guys could start a support group. If you're wondering how to prompt the update, you should meet the people packing AirPods Pro too. You guys could start a support group. How about some new Powerbeats Pro units to go with your new Powerbeats Pro firmware? Another piece from Mac Rumors says Apple subsidiary Beats has announced a couple of new pairs offered in collaboration with fashion designer Melody Ehsani. Each pair is sort of split in color, with the units on one coming in a split of pink and red, while the earphones in the other are each a blue and yellow split. Both pairs feature a sort of crude drawing of an eye with the words, "If you can read this, you're too close." The special edition stoppers will start selling this Friday, the 11th of November, on Apple's site. The company has yet to set a price for the units, while Mac Rumors says the Powerbeats Pro usually go for $249 a pair. Available models in ivory, navy, and black are currently selling through Apple's site at a $50 discount. And finally today, how about a new place to pick up your new Powerbeats Pro units to go with your new Powerbeats Pro firmware? Once more to Mac Rumors, which has Apple announcing a new flagship store opening next week. Vancouver, Canada will be home to the new Apple Pacific Center store. One store comes to town, one store leaves. The piece says the standalone store will replace Apple's existing store inside the adjacent Pacific Center shopping mall, a location that opened in 2008. Located on the corner of West Georgia and Howe Streets across from the Vancouver Art Gallery, Mac Rumors says the outdoor store is set to open on Friday, the 18th of November. Today on the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast, I get to talk to one of my favorite industry people about one of my favorite topics. Creative Strategies Principal Analyst and CEO Ben Beharin hits the show to talk augmented reality, virtual reality, Facebook, Apple, and the metaverse. That is all today on the Daily Observations podcast from the Mac Observer, online at macobserver.com or wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Ladder, smart, dynamic term life insurance. Learn more at ladderlife.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.